So the first module we're going to be covering is appointment. So after you've come to this page, I want you to click on the appointment tab, and that's going to open up all the tasks for this particular module. So appointment is a very easy box, and and from the icon over here, it looks like it's running Linux. You can tell it's running Linux from the little penguin symbol over here, and it has the following tags: databases, Apache, MariaDB, PHP, SQL, reconnaissance, SQL injection. So these are the types of technologies and techniques we're going to be using to finish this module. All right, so now that we're connected, so remember that if the connect task over here is not green, you're not going to be able to access this box. After that, next you're going to want to click on this button right here labeled Spawn Machine. So click on Spawn Machine, and that's going to spin up the virtual machine that's associated with the module. Okay, so the machine has finally come online. All right, so we've got our IP address for the machine associated with the module. An interesting thing about the interface over here at HackerFrogs is that you can click on the IP address, and it's going to copy the IP address to your clipboard. So the IP address is very important for interacting with this machine. Every time we run one of these exercises, we want to use the nmap command. So that's going to be nmap, and then nmap, and I like to run it with the -v command right here for very verbose. That's going to give us results right away. And we want to run it with T4, and T4 means that it's going to run with 4 threads at the same time, which means that the program is going to run faster. And we run -p-, and -p- means that we're going to run the nmap scan against every networking port. And lastly, what we need to do is we need to paste in the IP address. So we paste in the IP address. Very verbose. It's going to run with 4 threads, and we're scanning all of the ports on the machine, and we're running the nmap program. Okay, so we run that command, and we see that immediately we discovered open port 80 TCP on this particular server. All right, so that means that so typically port 80 is associated with HTTP, the HTTP protocol, which means that it's a web server. All right, so after we've run that, we can. I'll tell you now that there's only one port available on this machine right here, so we can probably quit out of this nmap command by doing Control-C. So we do the Control-C shortcut, and what we can do is we can bring back the previous command with the up arrow key, and that brings up the terminal history. And what we can do is we can run another nmap command. This time, we're not scanning for open ports. We're going to scan for the version of the software running on those ports. So we add these extra flags right here. It's going to be -S to run common scripts against any services we find, and -SV for version information. So that's going to let us know what version of software is running on these networking ports. All right, so we run that command, and we're running against port 80. So because we're only scanning one port, this scan should come back relatively quickly. And we see that so port 80 here, the status of the networking port is open. The service reported is HTTP, and the version of the web server software is Apache HTTPD 2.4.38 Debian. Okay, so this this tells us that this is a Linux server. It's running the Linux operating system. All right, so let's go ahead and directly access this access the web page associated with this web server. So we can just copy the IP address, and then we want to run the web browser inside of our virtual machine. So it's usually going to be Firefox, and then we will navigate to this IP address, and we're just going to give this an HTTP so that it knows that we're looking for a web page. And we see here that it leads us to a login page. All right, so this login page over here is just like any other login page, but there's something special about this particular login page. So anytime you come up on a login page, anytime you come up on a web server, you can try a variety of different ways to do initial testing. So for example, we could look for a robots.txt file on the web server. In this case, it's not found, so we're going to go back. Another thing that we can do when we're initially testing a web page is that we can look at the HTTP source for the particular web page. In this case, we can use the keyboard shortcut Control-U, and that's going to bring up the HTTP source for this particular web page. And we can look for interesting information in the HTTP source. In this case, there's nothing super interesting about the content that we find here. Another thing that we can do, in particular for login pages, is we can try the infamous SQL injection login bypass technique. So the SQL bypass technique is a way that we can bypass login pages and log into the web app directly. Okay, so it involves what is called SQL injection, SQL injection, and this is a way of tricking the database into running a command that it shouldn't. Okay, so I'm going to teach you the login bypass string, and so typically it's going to be quote, single quote, or double quote. So it's going to be single quote, and then it's going to be or 1 = 1, and then space, and then hash, the hash symbol right here. So if you know your SQL language, the quote is going to close out a query, and then the or is going to provide an alternate, and then 1 = 1 is a statement that equates to true, and then we quote out the rest of the SQL statement right here. So what this is doing is that it's letting us log in if we supply a true statement to it, and in this case, 1 = 1 is true in a programming sense. Okay, so the hash symbol over here is going to quote out the rest of the SQL query in case there was anything else that followed after it, and it's going to let us run just this SQL query right here. The last thing we need to do is we need to put something in the password field, it doesn't matter what, and then we click on login, and if this particular login page is vulnerable to SQL injection, then we will be able to log in without providing proper credentials. So we click on login, and it turns out that this web app was vulnerable to SQL injection, and we're able to log in using the infamous SQL login bypass technique. We were provided with the flag over here, so we're going to use this. We're going to use this eventually, but first we need to answer all the other questions associated with this box. So we're going to go back to the HackerFrogs page, and we're going to answer a series of questions over here. If you're working on this on your own, you could look to these questions as kind of a guide to where you should be looking next to solve this particular module. So task 1 here is, what does the acronym SQL stand for? We could ask our good know-it-all friend ChatGPT what this stands for. In programming, what does SQL stand for? Okay, so SQL stands for Structured Query Language. If a web app is connected to a database, it's usually an SQL database. So this is Structured Query Language. We can just copy this and use this as the answer. Go back here and we will submit the answer. And then we will move on to task 2. What is one of the most common types of SQL vulnerabilities? So common type of SQL vulnerabilities, we were just talking about it. It is called SQL injection. So we were able to inject SQL query into the username field, and that's how we were able to log in. So SQL injection is the answer, and then we submit that. Okay, so the next question is, what is the 2021 OWASP top 10 classification for this vulnerability? Okay, so for anybody who doesn't know, OWASP is an organization that seeks to improve the security of web applications. That is, any application that communicates with the internet. And they have a list called the OWASP Top 10, which lists the top 10 web application vulnerabilities. And they update this list every few years or so. And I think the latest list is from 2021. And they classify SQL injection as a type of we could look it up really quickly right now. Okay, so OWASP Top 10 2021. So let's take a look here. So this is what we're looking for right here. So they've got their top 10 over here according to different categories. For example, the number one vulnerability in the OWASP top 10 for 2021 is broken access control. But we're looking at SQL injection, which is a type of injection vulnerability, which is listed at number 3 on the OWASP top 10. So we can copy this text and we can submit this as the answer. Submit answer, and that is done. All right, so question number 4. What does Nmap report as the service and version that is running on port 80 of the target? Okay, so if you remember from our terminal over here when we ran our Nmap scan, we're looking for the web server, right? Hold on. Service and version, okay. So that is so this is the answer right here, Apache HTTPD 2.4.38. So this is the answer here. Copy that. And remember, inside of a Linux terminal, you have to use Control-Shift-C and Control-Shift-V to copy and paste. All right, we go back to the we also have to supply Debian over here. All right, so we paste that in, and we're going to do the double parentheses, and we're going to put Debian in there, and that should be the answer. Click on Submit Answer, and that is it accepted the answer. Okay, all right. So question number 5 is, what is the standard port used for the HTTPS protocol? But we could also ask ChatGPT what port is associated with HTTPS. So this is port 443. let's go back and fill that in as the answer, 443. All right, so task number 6. What is a folder called in web application terminology? So another word for folder that we use when we're talking about computer files and such is something called a directory. So I usually like to use the word directory. I use the word folder occasionally, but usually I use the D word over here, directory. Okay, so this is the answer. All right, number 7, what is the HTTP response code given for not found errors? Okay, so not found errors, every HTTP request has a numerical code associated with it. If for some reason you can't find a resource, that's usually going to be a 404 error. So 404 means not found. That is the answer. Submit. Okay. So here it's asking about a particular tool. So GoBuster is one tool used to brute force directories on a web server. What switch do we use with GoBuster to specify we're looking to discover directories and not subdomains? So this is so we didn't really use GoBuster, but we didn't really use GoBuster to do any directory busting on this particular module, but GoBuster is a common directory enumeration tool. So you're basically able to scan a bunch of different directory names on a web server and try to determine if any of these directories exist. And GoBuster is the tool to do that. So if we were to ask ChatGPT, using GoBuster, which switch do we use to do directory busting? Okay, so the switch we're using is dir. So if we want to do directory busting, we use GoBuster dir. So that's the answer there. So question number 9, what single character can be used to comment out the rest of a line in MySQL? So different versions of SQL, SQL, different versions of SQL software use different symbols for commenting out, for leaving comments in the code. In the case of MySQL, the character we're looking for is the hash character right here. So anything after the hash character is going to be interpreted as a comment by the system, which means that it's not going to be executed. So that's the answer. We can submit it. Okay, so task 10, question 10. If user input is not handled carefully, it could be interpreted as a comment. Use a comment to log in as admin without knowing the password. What is the first word? What is the first word on the web page returned? Okay, so now we have to take a look at the web page that we compromised. So that is over here, and the first word that we get after we log into the application over here is congratulations. So we can just copy this and use it as the answer for this question. And we should probably leave out the exclamation point and click on submit answer, and we are done. Okay. So the last thing we need to do is submit the root flag. So after we logged in, we were supplied a flag, which is a alphanumeric, seemingly looking alphanumeric value, which is this right here. All right, so that we're going to submit that as the final answer, submit root flag, and with that, we are finished this module. So the machine over here is going to shut off automatically, and we get this message right here, appointment has been pwned. All right, so we just need to click OK, and then we can move on to the next module. Hey there, HackerFrogs! Are you enjoying this workshop? Learning new concepts and skills? If so, there's a way you can support the channel, and it's totally free. Just click on the subscribe button below the video. Also, click on the like button. And if you have questions or comments on this workshop, please leave them below the video. Thanks for listening. And now, back to our scheduled programming.